Mariska Petrovna's weathered hands trembled slightly as she reached for her water glass, painfully aware of the whispers slicing through the air like paper cuts. The sun-drenched terrace of Oak Ridge Country Club fell silent when she'd entered in her simple linen dress, a jarring interruption among the designer labels and diamond-encrusted wrists of Boston's elite. "Someone should tell her the gardener's entrance is around back," snickered Victoria Blackwell, her voice deliberately carrying. The club's board president adjusted her Cartier watch with a flick of her wrist, making sure the sunlight caught its diamonds. Who even let her in? The cruel laughter that followed made Mariska's chest tighten, but she kept her expression neutral. At 62, her silver-streaked dark hair was pulled back in a simple chignon, her only adornment a pair of small pearl earrings that had belonged to her grandmother, a stark contrast to the ostentatious jewelry surrounding her. The waiter approached with visible disdain, barely meeting her eyes. "Will anyone be joining you, ma'am?" he asked with thinly veiled skepticism. "Yes," Mariska replied in her soft, Eastern European accent. "Thomas Bennett. He suggested this place for our meeting." The waiter's demeanor shifted instantly, his spine straightening. Thomas Bennett was the club's most influential member, whose family had founded Oak Ridge 3 generations ago. Before he could respond further, Bennett himself strode onto the terrace. At 70, he carried himself with the confidence of a man who had built an empire, his presence commanding attention. "Mariska," he called warmly, crossing to her table. "I apologize for keeping you waiting." Victoria's champagne flute froze halfway to her lips as Bennett bent to kiss Mariska's cheek. The club president watched in stunned silence, her perfect features contorting with confusion. "I see you found our little paradise," Bennett said, gesturing to the view. "Though I imagine it pales in comparison to your estate in the Alps." At the nearby table, Victoria leaned toward her companions. Who is she? And why is Thomas treating her like visiting royalty? None of them knew that the modest woman in the simple dress had just signed papers to purchase half of Oak Ridge Valley, including the very ground beneath their precious country club. Victoria Blackwell couldn't stop staring at the mismatched pair. She strategically repositioned herself 2 tables away, close enough to eavesdrop, yet far enough to appear coincidental. "I still can't believe you're considering our proposal," Bennett said to Mariska, his voice carrying just enough. The club members would be surprised. Mariska finished with a gentle smile. "People often are when I show interest in their ventures." Victoria's husband Marcus, the club's treasurer, shifted uncomfortably beside her. "Darling, perhaps we shouldn't." "Shush," Victoria hissed. "That woman looks like she buys her clothes at a farmer's market. What could Bennett possibly want with her?" Richard Hayes, the club's golf pro, approached Mariska's table with genuine warmth. Nothing like the cold reception she'd received from others. For 3 mornings, he had encountered her walking the grounds at dawn, asking thoughtful questions about the club's environmental impact. "Ms. Petrovna," Richard greeted her respectfully. "Did you enjoy your tour of the grounds?" "Immensely," Mariska replied, "though I remain concerned about the water usage. In my country, we learned the hard way that resources are finite." Victoria's perfectly sculpted eyebrows shot up. "First Bennett, now Hayes." When the youngest board member, Olivia Chun, stopped by their table with similar deference, Victoria could no longer contain herself. She smoothed her designer dress and approached Bennett's table with a practiced smile dripping with false warmth. "Thomas, what a lovely surprise. Won't you introduce me to your friend?" Bennett's smile tightened almost imperceptibly. "Victoria Blackwell, meet Mariska Petrovna." Mariska extended her hand, her simple silver ring a stark contrast to Victoria's diamond-laden fingers. "A pleasure to meet you, Mrs. Blackwell. Your club is quite impressive." "Yes, well, we maintain very high standards," Victoria replied, emphasizing the we with a proprietary air. "Membership is quite selective." Mariska nodded thoughtfully. "As it should be. Communities thrive when values align." Something in Mariska's tone made Victoria pause. There was a depth of understanding that suggested this woman knew far more about building communities than Victoria had assumed. "We were just discussing the proposed expansion," Bennett interjected, watching Victoria carefully. "Mariska has some interesting perspectives on development." "Development?" Victoria's smile faltered. "I wasn't aware we had finalized any expansion plans." "We haven't," Bennett replied calmly. "That's why outside consultation is valuable. As Victoria retreated, Bennett leaned forward, his voice dropping to a whisper that sent chills down Victoria's spine as she strained to hear. Let them talk, Mariska. By this time tomorrow, they'll know exactly who you are. And they'll wish they had shown more respect to the woman who holds their future in her hands. Morning dew glistened on the golf course as Mariska walked the misty perimeter, her practical walking shoes leaving slight impressions in the manicured grass. The rising sun cast long shadows across the valley. Her valley now, though only a handful of people knew it. Richard Hayes joined her, carrying 2 paper cups of coffee. Club members usually don't see the grounds at this hour, he said, offering her one. Thank you, Mariska replied. I've always believed you understand a place best at dawn, when it's still honest. Their peaceful moment was interrupted by the sound of golf carts approaching. Victoria Blackwell led a procession of board members across the dewy grass, her designer golf attire immaculate despite the early hour. We don't usually allow walking on the course before operational hours, Victoria called out, her tone suggesting policy rather than courtesy. Before Mariska could respond, Bennett approached from the clubhouse. Actually, I specifically invited Mariska to join us for the board meeting. Victoria's composure slipped. The board meeting is for members only, Thomas. I'm well aware of the bylaws, Victoria. I helped write them, Bennett replied pleasantly but firmly, and they allow for guest presenters. The boardroom was wood-paneled with views of the 18th hole. Victoria positioned herself at the head of the table, a power play that didn't go unnoticed. As Mariska took a seat, Marcus Blackwell leaned toward his wife. That linen dress must be off the rack, he whispered with contempt. Probably costs less than your golf glove. Victoria stifled a laugh, but Olivia Chun frowned slightly at the comment. When Bennett finally introduced Mariska, Victoria's smile turned brittle. While we appreciate outsider perspectives, Ms. Petrovna, Oak Ridge has traditions that have served us well for generations. Mariska nodded thoughtfully. Tradition is valuable when it preserves what matters most. But sometimes, evolution is necessary for survival. She opened a simple leather portfolio and removed several photographs showing a once beautiful mountain community scarred by unsustainable development. This was my village in the Carpathian Mountains, Mariska explained, her voice tinged with sadness. The wealthy came, built extravagantly, depleted the resources, and left when the next exclusive destination emerged. The boardroom fell silent as the images circulated. Your water table is dropping. Your membership is aging. Your operating costs are rising while your demographic base is shrinking, Mariska stated matter-of-factly. That's absurd, Marcus sputtered, color rising in his face. Our finances are perfectly. Your club will be bankrupt within 5 years if you continue on your current path, Mariska interrupted gently. The boardroom erupted in objections. Victoria's face flushed with anger. How dare you come in here, and I dare because I've seen it before, Mariska replied, her calm dignity making Victoria's outburst seem petty. And because I now own the land surrounding this entire valley. The room fell silent as the implication sank in. Thomas, Victoria said slowly, her voice trembling slightly. What exactly is going on here? Bennett cleared his throat. Mariska Petrovna isn't just our guest today. She's the new owner of the Oak Ridge Valley Development Corporation. She purchased the company and all its holdings last week. Victoria's face drained of color as she realized what that meant. The country club didn't own its land. It leased it from the Development Corporation, the corporation that this simple, unassuming woman now controlled. But that's impossible, Marcus whispered, his arrogance replaced by shock. That would require billions. Mariska smiled softly. Nothing is impossible, Mr. Blackwell, especially not for the granddaughter of Anton Petrovna. A heavy silence fell as the name registered. Anton Petrovna, the reclusive energy magnate whose fortune was rumored to exceed the GDP of small countries. Victoria stared at Mariska's simple linen dress, her unadorned hands, her practical shoes, unable to reconcile the woman before her with the power she now wielded over all their futures. Now, Mariska said gently, shall we discuss my vision for Oak Ridge Valley? The news spread through Oak Ridge Country Club like wildfire. By lunchtime, members whispered in corners, sharing what little they knew about Mariska Petrovna, the woman in the simple dress who could buy and sell them all without blinking. In the women's locker room, Victoria stood frozen before the mirror, her hands gripping the marble countertop. "It can't be true," she whispered to her reflection. "That woman can't possibly be a Petrovna." Olivia Chun entered quietly. "I looked her up after the meeting. Mariska Petrovna is Anton's only grandchild. When he died 10 years ago, she inherited everything: the energy companies, the tech investments, the real estate portfolio across 3 continents. Victoria turned, genuine bewilderment in her eyes. "Then why does she dress like that? Why doesn't she flaunt it?" Olivia considered this. Maybe because she doesn't need to. The concept was so foreign to Victoria that she couldn't process it. In her world, wealth existed to be displayed, power to be flaunted. Meanwhile, in the garden behind the pro shop, Mariska sat with Richard, sipping tea. "They're all talking about you," Richard said. "I've never seen Victoria so rattled." "Fear often masquerades as contempt," Mariska replied with quiet wisdom. "Before they knew who I was, they saw what they wanted to see, someone beneath them. Now they fear I'll treat them as they treated me. Will you?" Mariska's smile held a hint of sadness. Revenge is a poor foundation for building anything worthwhile. Their conversation was interrupted by Olivia's hesitant approach. "Miss Petrovna, I wanted to apologize for how you were treated. It wasn't right." "You have nothing to apologize for," Mariska replied warmly. "You weren't part of it." "But I didn't stop it either," Olivia admitted, shame evident in her voice. "I've been trying so hard to fit in here, to be accepted by Victoria and her circle. I compromise my own values to do it." Mariska studied her thoughtfully. "Sometimes we must lose ourselves before we find our true path." Victoria arrived, her designer golf dress replaced by a subdued navy suit. For the first time, uncertainty shadowed her perfect features. "Ms. Petrovna," she began stiffly, "the board has convened an emergency session to discuss your plans." Mariska nodded. "Of course, though I'm curious why the urgency." Victoria's smile was tight. "Given your considerable investment, we naturally want to align our vision with yours." "How thoughtful," Mariska replied, her eyes holding Victoria's. "Though yesterday, my vision seemed of little interest to you." A flush crept up Victoria's neck. "Yesterday, we didn't fully appreciate your perspective." "My perspective hasn't changed," Mariska said quietly. "Only your awareness of who was offering it." As Victoria walked away, Richard whistled softly. "She's planning something." "Of course she is," Mariska replied, watching Victoria's retreating figure. "People like Victoria don't surrender power. They regroup and attack from another angle." As they walked toward the clubhouse, Mariska paused to help a little girl whose toy boat had capsized in the pond, kneeling without concern for her dress. "All ships face storms sometimes. The trick is learning to right yourself afterward." The child's grateful smile was radiant, and Mariska returned it warmly. Richard and Olivia exchanged glances. In that moment, they both understood something fundamental about Mariska Petrovna. Her power came not from her wealth, but from something far more rare: genuine humanity. The boardroom was packed. Victoria had assembled not just the board but influential members from every club committee, a show of force designed to intimidate. "Before we begin," Victoria announced with artificial sweetness, "we've taken the liberty of preparing a presentation on Oak Ridge's unique heritage and values." Mariska accepted the glossy folder without opening it. "How thoughtful. We believe it's important you understand what makes Oak Ridge special," Victoria pressed. "Our exclusivity, our traditions, they're what our members value most." Mariska nodded thoughtfully. "And what about the larger community? What do they value about Oak Ridge?" Victoria's expression flickered with confusion. "The community? Oak Ridge exists to serve its members, not the town." "Interesting perspective," Mariska replied. "Where I come from, we believe the two are inseparable." Victoria's patience visibly frayed. "Ms. Petrovna, we've called this meeting to discuss the lease renewal." Mariska thought. Here was the real agenda. "We're prepared to offer a 10% increase in the annual lease payment." Victoria slid a thick document across the table, her confidence returning as she moved to familiar ground: negotiation. Mariska made no move to take the document. "Your current lease is significantly below market value. A 10% increase would still leave it there. Marcus leaned forward aggressively. The original lease was negotiated in good faith. We've improved the property significantly, with non-native landscaping that requires 4 times the water of indigenous plants. Mariska countered gently. With chemicals that have affected the valley's groundwater. With expansion that has encroached on wildlife corridors. The room temperature seemed to drop several degrees. What exactly are you proposing? Victoria asked, her voice brittle. Mariska opened her simple portfolio and removed a single sheet of paper. I'm not interested in renegotiating the lease. Instead, I'm proposing a complete restructuring of the relationship between the club and the valley. She handed the paper to Victoria, whose face drained of color as she read it. This is impossible, Victoria whispered, genuine shock in her voice. You want to convert Oak Ridge into a community trust? With public access to the grounds? Environmental restoration requirements. Not public access to everything, Mariska clarified. The club would maintain private areas. But yes, the walking trails, the bird sanctuary, the eastern meadows, those would become community spaces. You can't be serious. Marcus sputtered, his face reddening. Our members pay for exclusivity. They pay for quality, Mariska corrected. For beauty, for recreation, for connection. None of that requires keeping others out. Victoria's eyes narrowed. And if we refuse? Then yes, we would need to discuss lease termination, Mariska replied calmly. But I hope it won't come to that. As Mariska left the boardroom, the heated debate erupted behind her. Outside, the summer sun bathed the valley in golden light. She paused on the terrace, looking out over the rolling landscape. It's beautiful, isn't it? She said softly to Richard. Imagine how much more beautiful it could be if shared. Before he could respond, a commotion at the clubhouse entrance drew their attention. A tall man in an impeccable suit was arguing with the receptionist. I don't care about your membership rules, he was saying, his accent similar to Mariska's. I'm here to see Mariska Petrovna. Mariska's face lit up with recognition. Anton. The man turned, his stern expression melting into a smile. There you are, Aunt Mariska. As he strode toward them, Victoria emerged from the boardroom, just in time to witness Mariska embracing the newcomer. Victoria, Mariska called. I'd like you to meet my nephew, Anton Petrovna too, current CEO of Petrovna Global and, as of this morning, your club's newest prospective member. Victoria's face was a study in conflicting emotions as she realized that the inner circle she had so jealously guarded was now being infiltrated by the very power she had tried to resist. The headline of the Valley Herald the next morning sent shockwaves through Oak Ridge Country Club. Petrovna offers Valley Transformation, country club land, to become mixed-use community space. Victoria stalked into the clubhouse, newspaper clutched in her white-knuckled grip. Members parted before her like the Red Sea. Within an hour, the boardroom was filled with agitated members. Victoria remained standing at the head of the table, a general rallying her troops. She's declared war, Victoria announced, slapping the newspaper down. This publicity stunt is a direct attack on everything Oak Ridge stands for. She's offering to maintain the golf course, one member pointed out tentatively, while surrounding us with public housing and nature trails open to anyone. Victoria countered, her voice rising with indignation. Our exclusivity would be meaningless. The injunction will hold, Marcus assured the group, referring to the legal action they'd secretly filed. The case could drag on for years. Olivia cleared her throat. Has anyone actually read her entire proposal? Because I have, and it's not what you're describing, Victoria. All eyes turned to the newest board member. The housing wouldn't be public. It would be for our staff, who currently commute hours because they can't afford to live nearby. The nature trails would be carefully designed to enhance privacy, not diminish it. Victoria's eyes narrowed dangerously. Whose side are you on, Olivia? The side of facts, Olivia replied, her voice steady despite her racing heart. The door opened, and Thomas Bennett entered, his expression grave. You might want to reconsider your position, Victoria. Mariska just purchased controlling interest in Blackwell Development. The room fell silent. Blackwell Development, Marcus's company, the source of the family's wealth and status, was now in Mariska's hands. Marcus sank into a chair, his face ashen. That's not possible. Your minority investors sold their stakes, Bennett explained. Apparently, they found Mariska's offer too attractive to refuse. Victoria's composure cracked. This is personal. She's targeting us deliberately. It's business, Bennett corrected, and perhaps a lesson. Before Victoria could respond, Mariska entered alone, dressed in the same simple style as before. I hope we might speak privately, she said, addressing the entire board. Before positions become too entrenched. Victoria straightened, drawing dignity around herself like armor. There's nothing to discuss. Your hostile takeover of my husband's company makes your intentions clear. My intentions have been clear from the beginning, Victoria. It's your perception that has changed. Mariska placed a simple folder on the table. Inside is my complete vision for Oak Ridge Valley. Why should we? Victoria demanded, hurt and fear making her voice sharp. You've already shown you'll take what you want. Have I? Mariska's gaze was steady. I purchased land and business interests through legitimate means. I've proposed changes that would benefit the entire community while preserving the core of your club. What I haven't done is judge someone based on appearance, dismiss ideas without consideration, or use position to humiliate others. The words hung in the air, a mirror reflecting uncomfortable truths. What exactly do you want from us? Marcus asked, his voice hollow. Partnership, Mariska replied simply. The choice between progress and tradition is a false one. We can honor Oak Ridge's history while creating a more sustainable, inclusive future. You speak of inclusion, Victoria said bitterly. Yet you've used your wealth as a weapon just as surely as we've used our status. For the first time, Mariska smiled, a genuine expression that softened her features. A fair observation, Victoria. Power is power, whatever form it takes. After she left, Bennett reached for the folder, opening it deliberately. My God, he breathed after scanning the first page. She's offering to transfer Blackwell Development back to Marcus, at a loss, if we agree to work with her. Victoria's certainty faltered, her worldview beginning to crack under the weight of unexpected generosity. 3 weeks later, the morning of the announcement dawned clear and bright. A stage had been erected on the first tee, with seating for hundreds across the carefully manicured grass. What had begun as a club press conference had evolved into a community event. Behind the stage, Victoria stood in uncharacteristic silence, watching the crowds arrive. The past weeks had transformed her in ways both subtle and profound. The perfectly coiffed hair and designer clothes remained, but something in her bearing had shifted, the brittle shell of superiority replaced by a more grounded presence. Quite a turnout, Mariska observed, joining her at the window. Victoria nodded. They're curious about the future. I can't blame them. An unlikely alliance had formed through exhaustive negotiations, heated arguments, and gradually evolving respect. Are you ready for this? Mariska asked gently. Victoria's laugh held a hint of self-deprecation. To publicly embrace everything I've spent decades opposing? As ready as I'll ever be. Victoria approached the microphone first, her poise impeccable despite the weight of the moment. For 75 years, she began, Oak Ridge Country Club has stood as a symbol of excellence and tradition in our valley. Today, we announce the next chapter in that proud history. She paused, her gaze sweeping the audience, club members and townspeople alike. Change rarely comes easily, particularly to institutions built on tradition. When Mariska Petrovna first proposed transforming Oak Ridge Valley, many of us, myself included, saw only threat, not opportunity. Victoria's candor elicited murmurs of surprise from those who knew her well. I was wrong, she continued, the words difficult but delivered with dignity. What Ms. Petrovna offered wasn't destruction but evolution, a chance for Oak Ridge to remain relevant and vibrant for another 75 years. She gestured to Mariska, inviting her to join. The two women, one in a tailored designer suit, the other in a simple linen dress, stood together at the microphone, a visual embodiment of the bridge being built. Together, they unveiled the rendering, revealing the comprehensive redevelopment plan. The core golf course remained, though redesigned with sustainable practices. The clubhouse stood unchanged. But surrounding these traditional elements were thoughtfully integrated new spaces, nature trails, modest housing for staff, educational facilities, and a medical outpost to serve the valley's rural residents. As the formal presentation concluded, Victoria found herself momentarily alone, watching as Mariska chatted easily with a group of groundskeepers. "Remarkable transformation," Marcus commented, joining his wife. "The valley or you?" Victoria smiled ruefully. "Both, I suppose. When she first appeared in that simple dress, all I saw was someone who didn't belong," Marcus said thoughtfully. "Now I wonder if perhaps we were the ones who had lost our way." As the gathering began to disperse, Victoria made her way to Mariska's side. "Will you return?" Victoria asked, and something in her tone suggested the question carried more weight than simple scheduling. "Of course," Mariska replied. "Oak Ridge is part of my life now." Victoria hesitated, then asked the question that had lingered unspoken between them. "Why did you do it this way? You could have simply forced your vision through from the beginning." Mariska considered this thoughtfully. "Because lasting change cannot be imposed. It must be embraced. And sometimes, people can only embrace what they've helped create." She glanced around at the club that had initially rejected her. "Besides, true wealth isn't measured by what you own or control, but by what you transform." Victoria nodded slowly, understanding dawning in her eyes. "I'm beginning to see that." As Mariska turned to leave, Victoria added, "One more thing. That dress you wore the first day, was it deliberate? A test to see how we'd respond?" Mariska's smile held a hint of mischief. "Perhaps. Or perhaps I simply prefer comfort to display." She glanced down at her simple linen dress, then at Victoria's designer suit. "We each present ourselves to the world in ways that reflect our values. The mistake is in judging others when their choices differ from our own." With that gentle truth hanging between them, Mariska joined her nephew at the waiting car. Victoria watched them go, then turned back to the club that had been her domain for so long. For the first time, she saw it not as a fortress to be defended, but as a living community capable of growth and change. As Mariska had shown them all, true wealth wasn't in what you possessed, but in what you were willing to share. And the richest legacy wasn't one of exclusion, but of meaningful change embraced with open hearts and minds. If this story about judgment, transformation, and true worth resonated with you, like and hit the subscribe button to join our community.